Hi there. Today I'm going to show you how to make hard cider at home that is young and sweet. Young and sweet cider is different from traditional cider because it is not fermented all the way, so it has a little more sweetness and less alcohol than traditional ciders. So I like making this kind of cider because, for one, it's really easy and ferments really quickly, so there's a very short time from the beginning of the project to when you're drinking your cider. And two, you get to keep a lot more of the fruit flavors and natural sweetness from the juice that you don't get if you ferment all the way. On the downside, it's not as alcoholic as normal cider, so if you want a drink that's going to put you on the floor, this might not be the thing for you. It's a really easy process. I have everything that I need right here, and I'm going to walk you through it step by step. First off, and most importantly, you need juice. The better juice you use, the better your cider is going to be, so if you can get something local and fresh, that's great. You can probably make this work with store-bought treetop apple juice or something like that, but the better juice you use, the better your cider is going to be. So today I'm using this pear apple juice that I got from a local orchard. This juice has already been pasteurized, which is great because it's going to take one step out of our process. If you get unpasteurized juice, you probably want to pasteurize it yourself, so all of the yeast and bacteria that's in the juice naturally does not affect your cider. I'm not going to go through how to pasteurize today, but it's fairly easy, and I'm sure you can find out how to do that somewhere else online. Next, you need a stopper that's going to fit tightly into the neck of your bottle so that you can form an airtight seal in your bottle while the fermentation is going on. But because fermentation is going on, there's going to be carbon dioxide produced, so you're going to need an airlock. I like this kind of airlock, also available, you'll see these. There's no difference between the two functionally, I just like this kind because it's a little easier to clean. I sanitized the airlock and the stopper beforehand using diluted iodophor sanitizer. I don't think that's strictly necessary for this case because the fermentation period is so short and there's so little surface area coming in contact between the stopper and airlock and the actual juice, but something I just do out of habit. The next ingredient you're going to need is yeast. I'm using dry English ale beer yeast just because that's something I've used in the past for fully fermented ciders, and I like the character it gives to the cider. In this case, again, since we're not fermenting all the way, most of the characteristics of the yeast, the differences in different types of yeast probably aren't going to come through. They'll just be overridden by the sugar and fruity flavor that's still left in the cider. So you could probably get away with using even bread yeast for this, but anything else you can get your hands on is probably going to work. Wine yeast, champagne yeast, other types of beer yeast. And any of those will work for you, but I like this kind of the dry English ale yeast. Lastly, I like to have a little masking tape and a marker to write the date that I started fermenting on, just so it's easy to keep track of when the fermentation is likely to be done. So that's literally all the equipment we need. This is way simpler than doing like a big 5-gallon batch of cider, let alone beer or other types of homebrew. So here we go. First thing you want to do is take the cap off your cider bottle and let some fresh air in. Then put the cap back on and shake it vigorously. This is going to get some oxygen mixed into the juice, which is going to help your yeast grow early on in the fermentation process. It's really important to have a lot of oxygen supply in there so you get a good healthy yeast supply and good yeast growth, which is important for the fermentation. So that's probably enough. You can see some foam forming there, which is good. That means there's lots of air mixed in there. I'm going to take the cap off again and put some yeast in. I use about a half teaspoon of yeast. I have absolutely no data or education backing up that that's the right amount. It just seems roughly right, since this yeast packet would be good for about 4 to 5 gallons of cider. It seems like half a teaspoon is the right proportion for that. Gonna put the lid back on again and mix it up gently, or a little more gently this time, so the yeast get mixed in. Even if you don't do this, the yeast will kind of hydrate and settle down, but it's good to get a little mixture. Then we're gonna put the stopper on. The stopper is off, and now in my dirty sink. So we'll rinse that off. Like I said, sanitation is not super key here. Put it back in, maybe a little more gently this time so it doesn't pop out. then we'll put the airlock on. Either of these types of airlock is going to have a little line in the middle, and what you need to do is fill up, I guess I can fill up before putting it on, you fill that up with liquid, and then basically what this is it'll only let air out, and air from the environment can't get in, so you're creating a little breaker there that the carbon dioxide produced by fermentation can get out, but nothing, air or bacteria or other kinds of wild yeast can get in from the environment. And then put the cap on there. Write the date on it, and that's going to be it. Now all you really have to do is wait for about a week and a half for this to be done. It really, and that's really a rough estimate. It really depends a lot on how much yeast you use, how the yeast behaves, what temperature you have the fermentation going on at. I just leave mine in the cabinet in the kitchen here, so it's at basically room temperature, and that's a good temperature for this yeast to be at. If you know, if it's a summer and it's consistently hotter in your house or apartment, then it might go faster. And if you were to leave this, outside in the winter, that would, probably be a bad idea because it might just shut down the yeast completely. But, colder temperatures are going to make it go slower and faster, and hotter temperatures are going to make it go faster. I wouldn't suggest anything over 80 degrees or so, because then you might start getting some strange yeast behavior and get some off flavors. But that's it. Now you just need to wait a while for the fermentation to kick in, and you're ready to go. Okay, so we're back. The cider has been fermenting for 11 days, and I think I'm ready to bottle it. It's really simple at this stage. If you want still cider, all you have to do is get it out of its fermentation vessel and put it in the refrigerator to stop the fermentation. I say you should get it out of its fermentation vessel because by now, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a lot of yeast sediment at the bottom of the bottle. If you were to just put this bottle in the fridge and start pouring glasses from it, all that would get stirred up and you'd have yeasty, cloudy cider, which wouldn't be as good. So you need to gently pour off the cider and try to leave as much of the sediment in the bottle as possible. If you don't have anything around that's to use other than this jar, you can just pour this into like a stock pot or something, and then rinse this jar out and then pour the cider back. But if you want carbonated cider, you need a vessel that's going to be able to hold the pressure, and what you want to do is leave it out, put it in the sealed bottle and leave it out overnight, roughly, at room temperature, and then put it in the fridge. And during that time, the fermentation is going to continue and it's going to carbonate the cider. You need to be really careful with that because it's really unpredictable how much fermentation is going to happen. So you might get really, really carbonated cider, or in the worst case, your bottle might explode, which is definitely bad if the pressure gets too high. But I've had okay luck just leaving it out overnight and then put it in the fridge and drink it relatively soon. So all I'm going to do is gently pour the cider into this growler and try to leave as much of the sediment in the bottom as possible. I should move over the sink because I'm dripping. I don't have anything interesting to say while I'm pouring. It looks like now the yeast is fairly solid on the bottom, so it's not going to escape too quickly, but I'm still going to leave some of the liquid down there. And I'm going to seal the top and leave this out overnight and put it in the fridge tomorrow morning. Do not forget, if you leave it out, don't forget to put it in the fridge. I don't think you'd be able to carbonate it in something like this because these bottles just aren't built to keep pressure, so I wouldn't recommend that. Either it'll just leak all the pressure, or worst case it'll, crack the bottle or something like that. But that's it. You can just put this in the fridge whenever you're ready and then drink it well. Enjoy!